If you were to look at the number of franchise suppliers that go to some of these franchise conferences, they outnumber the franchisors and franchisees. Yet very rarely are they given the opportunity to have a voice, and that's why we do these. Meet the suppliers, the chance to have a voice. So, Rich, thanks for doing this. What I like to start off with, because I think it frames our discussion nicely, is how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story?
Okay, yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So I fell into franchising for pizza, beer, and Krispy Kreme donuts. How's that for an answer? So
That's great.
My job in college was at a hotel. Franchising was in the model there. So that's a weird saying, but my first job, I just needed money for beer, pizza, and Krispy Kreme donuts. How I truly got into Pacer, though, is we were working, or I had been working for Marriott International and helping them open hotels. And we were, at that point, using an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of all the things we needed to do to open up a new unit. And I want to say at that point, we were probably opening 150 to 200 locations globally a year. And so that Excel spreadsheet would just get emailed to the next general manager. And then someone on the team would join. And so the general manager would forward it on to their director of sales. And then someone else on the team, and then it get forwarded again. And at each location, we would end up with 10, 15, 20 copies of the exact same Excel spreadsheet. Multiply that by however many units were being opened that year. And it became completely impossible to keep track of the master version. We didn't have any idea who was on pace at each individual unit. Nor did we have any way to make sure that every unit was following the latest and greatest instructions to best open that property. So that's kind of how we got started with Pacer. It was really started with the pre-opening model. If you're a brand new franchisee, you're a brand new unit within that franchisee, what are all the things that I need to do, which can be a very overwhelming process to get open, and not only just open, but to be setting systems up in a way that's going to operationally carry them through for years and years and years to come. That then transitioned to, okay, wait a second, I used it for openings. What about all these different things that the franchisor is helping the franchisee with and implementing across the entire brand, if you will? So, I look at that franchisor as really it's the visionary that's coming up with the latest and greatest things that's really going to set that brand apart. So all of the existing properties and units constantly need to be implementing the latest and greatest things as well. So how do they communicate from the franchisor down to their franchisee what they should do in order to be the most successful? This is the latest marketing item. This is the latest system. This is the latest cost-cutting measure. All of those things that need to get rolled out across the brand, either from a customer loyalty consistency perspective or cost savings perspective. So we utilize kind of both sides of the equation. Here's all the stuff you need to do to be successful from the start, and here's how you can implement things down the road.
How many brands do you guys work with now?
We're at about 30 customers. That probably represents about 50 brands.
Do you see
similarities? It's probably more than that. So many of our customers have, 10, 15, 20 brands. So it takes some math.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you see similarities in the problems that they're still facing? Now, obviously, you've solved from the organizing the operational communication structure, but do they still have similar issues if you look through there? And does that also get your brain thinking about what's that next thing that you can solve?
I think yes. I think at least the duplication piece hopefully is solved between either us or other applications that allow for collaboration tools like Office 365. That you can have an Excel spreadsheet that 50 people can be sharing. I think the piece that's still missing is what we can do to learn from our franchisees and make sure those learnings get spread and passed along everybody else. And that's really, I think, a big opportunity is to grab that mind sharing, if you will, and make sure everybody can benefit from someone's best practices that are out there. I don't think it's up to the franchisor to always be the visionary. I think if anything, it's up to them to be listening to their franchisees and what's working well in each person's market and picking from that and then making it better and then communicating it out to everybody else. And that, I think, is still a piece that we are trying to solve.
Out of curiosity, and maybe the answer is, Nick, you're wrong, but obviously, like the bulk of this business is brick and mortar, but the reality is home-based or mobile still has to go through that same opening checklist. Have you cracked into that side of the business yet?
We've talked to a couple, especially since Frank Camp gave me some great opportunities to chat with some of them. One in particular is like a nursing home healthcare group. And yes, they have the exact same challenges. And what we found is they were using a typical project management tool, which there's so many of them on the market, but they're really good at like taking, what's the project manager triangle? You've got scope, time, and cost, right? So they're very good at managing individual projects, but that company was basically having to copy that project over and over and over again, which is fine, but then they're completely separate projects. But what we're really seeing, whether it's brick and mortar or home based, is it's still the same project that's being duplicated over and over again. And in my head, a project that is being scaled is no longer a project, it's now an implementation. And an implementation needs to work slightly different than a project. Implementations in our head require kind of orchestration from a conductor, if you will, if you really want to use a symphony term or orchestration term. So yeah, it totally applies. You're still bringing on new franchisees, right? They've never done this before. They're brand new to your brand. They don't know what your standards are. They don't know what your expectations are. All of that stuff needs to get communicated through onboarding checklist. And then every single time they bring on another unit within that, or another partner, I don't know the right term, you could probably tell me the term better, but if it's home healthcare, that person that the managing the franchisee is still bringing on more people. So each person they bring on needs to be onboarded as well, right? So it's a slightly different onboarding to the brand, but there's still stuff that they need to learn. So it's the exact same strategy, whether it's brick or mortar or not. Maybe just a couple less tasks.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
I mean, not that you're asking for this. I can figure out what you guys do and how you do it. When I land on your website, like I want to see your why UI now to be a little bit clearer. And here's where my brain goes as I think through this. Like we had a client call this morning with Paris Baguette, and they've had tremendous growth. Selling franchise is not the issue. Now comes they have a real estate challenge of finding enough real estate. But I asked the head of development, I said, well, what's winning on construction? He goes, we were at 26 weeks from lease signing to opening going into this year. We're at 24. Our goal is to be at 20. I think about that. The reason you're able to shave off 6 weeks is because of organization. It's not like you're not working faster, you're working more effective. So when I'm looking at your website, it's like we get you open faster so your franchisees can get to making money. Like that's part of the magic of what you guys are doing. Then you think about layers down. So take the example of senior care. Well, you have the layer of I've now signed my franchise agreement to what happens next to now being open for business. You have the checklist and the operational modeling, and it's all franchise throughout a system of how do I now market my business? What's my checklist there? And then you get into, I have a customer that's onboarding. What's my checklist there? And the reality is, I think it goes back to some of the opening statement of the problem that Pacer is solving is this is all back of the napkin, Google Sheets, and it's unorganized. And it gets unorganized, especially for a brand that has any sort of scale that's beyond, say, a new franchisee onboarding once a month. And so now you've solved this. But if I think about like the problem that you're solving, you're not turning leadership vision into organized, scalable success. You're actually organizing a process so you can get to making money faster. That was my viewpoint.
That's absolutely 100% correct. So I think that we've been so used to piecemealing it, we as people in the organization, for so long that we've kind of taken it for granted that that's just the way it is. And so for us, the biggest thing is getting our message out there that, hey, there actually is an easier, better way that's going to save you a heck of a lot of time. But I also look at like the Paris baguettes thing. If they want to go from 26 to 24 or 20 down to 18, what we do well is, because it is at scale and because it is repetitive, starts to allow us to be able to then do comparisons with all of that data collected together, right? So from our perspective, we can then take a look at all of the openings that you did for the last year. Okay, they all pretty much follow the same checklist. We don't force them to do the exact same checklist over and over, but there's going to be certain things that are there for every single one. Okay, great. So you have this list of tasks. It got done 20 different times. Give me some analytical data across all those 20 different tasks. Which of those 20 tasks were always late? Okay, well, why was that particular task averaging 14 days late? Was it the person that needed to do it wasn't hired yet? Was it the person that needed to do it didn't realize they needed to do it? Were they just overwhelmed because there's too much other stuff going on? Is it just in the wrong place in the timeline and there was a prerequisite that prevented them from getting it done? Like when you have all these different Excel spreadsheets or whatever, there's no way to really take a look at the data across the full set. And that's one thing that I love about Pacer, is the fact that we keep every location task tied to the original task at the template level, so we can aggregate all that data down to each individual task. So here's the thing. You found that it's 14 days late. Let's find out the reason for that. We're going to fix that. That just shaved off 2 weeks of your opening potentially.
Totally. Well, I think in Super Bowl commercials, but if your Super Bowl commercial was like 2 Excel spreadsheets with a mouth that talk to each other, they never discuss things with each other. And what you just said is, what would a world look like if you could pull the data across multiple projects to gain insight to now optimize that next project? Because let's just say insert X was always late because the order started too late. Well, now you gain an insight that you need to start this order on day 1, and your Gantt chart is actually backwards. And the other statement you said, it is what it is. You almost need to pacer. Like you got to go back and do the same thing to you.
Yeah, I love that. So when we look at a new customer that's joining Pacer, we tend to find that the data side of it is usually the last thing in their mind at that particular point in time. It's usually like, I'm in a siloed organization. I've got too many different people going in too many different directions, using too many different tools. I need to bring them together into a single tool where all of these teams, all these locations, all these units are using the same thing. And I have dashboarding to be able to show me at any point in time exactly where every single unit is in the process. And that's what we're really good at, is out of the box, we have some 20 different graphical representations of the data. All you have to do is start using the application. It's already built for you. And then there's another 30 or so reports right out of the box. So you don't have to go in and build all that stuff. So you really have visual stuff. But that's usually what we hear from people that first get started is, I just need to be able to consolidate all this communication into one place. And then they start to be wowed by, oh, wait a second. Now that I got on the same place, what is all this cool data that I can actually get out of it? What can I learn from it? And where is that kind of really advanced our organization? So yeah, I think it's really cool what the data can do. I think it's really interesting that our customers are usually not there until they're in the tool for a little while, and that's understandable.
Well, and play back the words you just said, because you just said a lot of our customers come to us saying, I just want my communication to talk, basically all my information to have a place to land. Take what you just said, redo the landing page when you land on your website, and you already have the answer. Like oftentimes when you start thinking about the problem that you really solve for a brand, that ends up being the lead sentence that you want to put forward. And I also think like you have tremendous assets on the hotel side purely. And I can see this as a trend in our clients. Like, okay, what would a world look like? Let's take Paris Baguette's probably not the right fit. More of a sit down restaurant. Take a breakfast brand that's like, well, wait a second, what would it look like if we could take over that unbranded space in a hotel that now we could actually pull in the community to raise revenue for that hoteler? And so they are having these thoughts like, how do I get in there? Well, you already have the audience on the hotel side. It's like if you started doing like discussions with the operators on what you look for in a business, like you have another asset that you can put together from a marketing standpoint to get the story out there. But I think you make perfect sense as a solution to any franchisor. And frankly, the early stage ones should be thinking about this early, because now this turns into a support mechanism that they're able to use when they're trying to sell franchises. So
I would think even earlier in the process, when you're starting to let your baby out of the crib and to expand out into other babies, it's a scary world, right? So you're very concerned about the consistency of your baby that's being passed across the region or even the country or the globe, right? So maintaining that consistency across all of your different units is super important at the early stage. I agree with you. I think some people are like, oh, I'm going to need Pacer when I'm like 10, 15 units or franchisees down the road. The problem by then, you're so busy and you piecemealed so much stuff together, it's a harder transition to move into another system. So might as well start when you're small and grow as you grow.
I mean, maybe when you scroll over the industry, you should put emerging franchise brands. That way you can start chipping off them too. So, all right, if someone's watched us to this point, Rich, anything else you want them to know about the business?
I think I would only really just share that for us, we're all about helping our customers maintain consistency. Right? We kind of talked about that already, that really consistency is really the ideal customer for us, and I think most of our I think that's why franchising is so interesting for us as a customer base, is because we really help people with that consistency. But kind of like what we talked about at the beginning, one of our big things moving forward is not only how to better utilize that data, but how do we make sure that we're learning from one another? And if you've got 10, 15 different franchisees out there, they all have great ideas. And so how do we then interject that great ideas and collect that information and then use it and be able to communicate it back out to make our brand even better? That's really one big piece, is kind of continuing to loop around. Because you have the ability in Pacer to go into a template and edit a task, and it automatically updates every single unit that's working on that task in a second, we have the really great ability to be able to harness new ideas, go back into that checklist, make a couple of small edits. Everybody's already got the latest. Everyone then has the latest and greatest information. I think that's hugely valuable and probably overlooked a lot of times just in the industry in general. I think we collect a lot of data. It's been really hard to be able to take that data and be able to communicate it back out. And I'm hopeful that younger generations than I am will probably do a better job with that than my generation. So I think they're used to being more on sharing platforms, whether it's social media or what have you, that they're more willing to share what's worked well for them and getting that stuff out there. So I think that's a big piece that we're kind of focused on, is how do we make sure we continue the cycle of learning and make sure that the latest and greatest stuff is always out there.
Well, I think as your business continues to grow, just access of data across multiple brands and industries is only going to make you even stronger. So anyway, I love what you guys are doing. I appreciate you doing this. Thanks for sharing some of your story with us.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having us, and good to be with you. Thanks so much.
I love it.
See you, Nick.
For Rich, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Supplier.